And all of a sudden, it's just as if something just flipped in me. And I just was like, I just had to go out. I had to leave the space. And so I just walked out the door. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my husband, my poor husband. Oh my goodness.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Screen Less, Play More. I am Cynthia, the founder of ScreenLessPlayMore.com. I have a really quick favor to ask of you. If you've been enjoying the show, could you go onto whatever platform you use, whether it's Apple or Spotify or whatever, and do a really quick rating and review? That will help the algorithm boost us and help more parents find the show. Thank you so much. Today, I'm excited to welcome Josée Bergeron. She has a really super great book that she's just written called Beyond the Front Door, Embracing Nature for a Happier and Healthier Family. And I really, really enjoyed it. It has so many tips for getting kids outside, getting them in nature, getting them dirty. It has recipes and crafts and things to do in every different season of the year. So welcome, Josée.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, I also loved the very, very beginning of the book starts out with you basically running away from home.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents can relate, and especially a lot of moms can relate, that everything's going crazy in the house and you're trying to make dinner and the kids are yelling. And at the time you were pregnant, which also I know adds to kind of like crazy hormone brain. But sort of tell us about that night. You're just sort of like making soup and you're just like, I'm out of here.
Totally. So yeah, I was just, it was an evening in October. I was at home. I was making leek soup. I still remember what kind of soup I was making, leek potato. And, my children are just being kids. They're loud. They're being chaotic. They're bickering. The toddler's screaming. My husband walks through the door from work. And I am just feeling this intense sense of overwhelm just fill my body. And all of a sudden, it's just as if something just flipped in me. And I just was like, I just had to go out. I had to leave the space. Mm-hmm. And so I just walked out the door. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my husband, my poor husband. Oh my goodness. And I just got into the car. I was pregnant. And it wasn't moving very quickly. So I just got in the car. I actually turned off the locator on my phone. Like I was really...
I was like, gone, girl.
I was gone. And I drove to a lake nearby that I really love. And I spent some time by the edge of the lake, actually stepping into the lake, which was frigidly cold. And it was this moment of reset for me, which I so desperately needed. And as you read in my book, I'd love to say that everything turned around at that point and it was lovely and it was beautiful, but that wasn't the case because at that point in my life, I was just so overwhelmed, and it definitely took, like a slow shift and a slow change to help myself feel more just grounded and rooted. But that was the start. That was the beginning.
But that was kind of the moment where you realized just that you had really disconnected from nature and you were really craving it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that moment really brought me back home into nature and realized just how much I needed to sort of shift things in our life, reprioritize spending time outdoors, not only for my kids, but for myself as a parent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought that was just really interesting because I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and had a lot of nature around me. And then I moved to Los Angeles for a very long time and was just enjoying LA and no big deal. It's a city and starting out my career. And it was so funny that as soon as I had kids, it was like this instant shift in my head where I just craved nature and I wanted to be around water and trees. And I finally realized, oh, well, duh. When I was growing up, there was a pond about 10 feet behind our house. So I realized, well, yeah, I was constantly surrounded by brooks and streams and ponds and trees. And it's like something just clicked in me of like, I got to get my kids back there. And I couldn't get back to Colorado fast enough. And we eventually did move back. And I'm always taking my kids out on walks and hikes and trying to get to streams and stuff. But it's just sort of funny that I wonder if there's like this internal like primal mother thing where you're like, I'm having kids. I just got to get back to nature. I don't know. But you also say in your book, and I think it's really, really true, there's three main things that are impeding us from doing that. And it's cities, schedules, and screens.
Yeah. Those are the three big ones.
What do you think we can do practically to try to get over those three things and get ourselves back outside?
Yeah. So, I mean, each of those big three. So I talk about this extinction of experience, right? This separation of ourselves from the natural world. And so when we're looking at cities, we know that a lot more families are moving to urban, suburban areas because there's just more available to families, right? There's more jobs, there's more healthcare, there's more education. Even our family, as you read in the book, we actually moved to a city as well. The challenge with cities, however, is that the outdoors or nature just is a lot more fragmented. Access might be a bit more challenging for families, especially to find places that might feel safe and comfortable for them to go to. But I think in terms of that particular one, nature is everywhere. It is in the cities as well. And that I think as parents, sometimes we think in order to go outside with our kids, we need to be going to the mountains or we need to be going camping. Essentially, we need to leave the city. But what we see in research is that even in sort of noticing nature in urban areas can still have a positive impact. So I think that's sort of one tip that I share for parents, that notice the nature that's around you and know that even in doing that, it's going to have a positive impact, on your family and your children's health and well-being. So that's the city part of it. The other part is schedules. Like, parents are so busy and kids are so busy. We're so overscheduled. Parenting is so intensive right now. And this is a really big one. Parents often, when I, in the research and when I talk to parents and ask them, what's the main thing that's keeping you from getting outside with your kids? And again, it's time. That's the reason, a lack of time. And so this is a huge issue. And honestly, we could probably just talk about this for an hour. But but I think, again, for this, this struggle that we're facing, we kind of need to take a few different approaches. One is to be really, I think, aware as parents to what we're committing our families, our kids to, and to realize that, especially when it comes to extracurricular activities, those things are really, there's a lot of good that comes in that. But there's also a lot of good in creating space in our days and in our schedules to get kids outside, a lot of benefits. So, awareness around that, and also awareness that even in a busy day, if we, weave in moments of getting outside, parking a little further in the parking lot, right? Noticing the clouds, noticing the mountains, if there's mountains around you, even in those like moments of noticing, those also have an impact as well. So that's kind of like the overscheduled part. And then screens, right? Screens is a huge, it's a huge one. So as I'm sure your listeners probably know, parents and kids are spending a lot of time on screens. And we're not just talking about, for educational purpose or work purposes, but for entertainment purposes, hours at a time. And the statistics are going to be different depending on age range that we're looking at. But the problem with all the screen time is that, one, it takes time away from us. So we're getting into that sort of overscheduled bit. But then also it keeps us indoors. It keeps us, stationary. And we know that there's a lot of also mental, health kind of impacts on our children. But also it shifts the way that we perceive the world. It shifts the way that we experience the world for children, for parents. And it kind of narrows us in a very specific way. And so when we can create healthy boundaries with screens and take that time and bring kids outside, we're just opening up a whole world for them, for play and exploration and connection that really help them thrive in ways that, screens can't do.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, you're talking to the right person about that. Amen.
Yeah, preaching to the choir.
Well, I really liked in your book, you have a lot of suggestions of, maybe we are really busy. Maybe, our schedule just isn't working out today for us to go on a walk or whatever. But you have these great, just tiny little suggestions of, if you're driving somewhere with the kids, don't give them the iPad, don't give them a screen, let them look out the window. Because twofold, that's getting them off of the screen, but it's also letting them look at nature, look at the neighborhood, figure out where they are. You also say, maybe just sit on your front porch, sit on your balcony, read a book to the kids on the front porch. I mean, you don't have to be sitting on the couch to read a book. You could just do that on the front steps of the house or the apartment. Or if you've got really little kids that are still at the house, or you've got homeschool kids, do your morning snack outside. Just teeny tiny parts of your day that maybe you could just do that outside, or have one meal a week outside, or something small that's pretty manageable. I mean, you don't have to be going on a 5-mile hike. It's like, let's just read our book outside. And another thing is, I remember somewhere I heard someone saying, it's not all or nothing. So recently, what I figured out to do is, it's about a 30-minute bike ride to my kids' school, and there's no way I'm going to get my act together in the mornings for us to bike to school. But in the afternoon, that's not a problem. So what I've started doing is I stick their bikes in the car, and I drive us to school, and then I drop off their bikes at school and lock them up outside. And then I will bike to school in the afternoon and bike with them home. So at least we're doing one of the 30-minute bike rides.
I mean, that's genius. That's a great idea. And I think that's one of the really strong messages in my book, that again, you don't even need to see yourself as a, outdoorsy person to be able to connect with nature, to weave in these moments throughout your day. Like you say, in the car, it's so easy to just hand out devices in the car, right? To keep kids quiet. So we're not going crazy as the driver. But I've had so many really cool opportunities come up with my kids in the car, them noticing a hawk flying overhead. Oh, Mom, look at that red-winged blackbird perching over there. It's just really cool, really amazing to have those opportunities to connect with nature in the car. It seems counterintuitive, but again, these are opportunities we often miss when we hand our kids screens.
Yeah. In your book, it's really cool that you go through each season. There's different crafts and activities and recipes. So it's kind of getting close to spring a little bit. What are some ideas of nature activities that we could do outdoors with our kids once it gets to be spring?
So one of the first things that I know that I love to do with my own children is we will go on a noticing walk. So even before we hit the spring equinox, which is coming up soon here, we'll go and we'll start to wander outside. And I kind of call it early signs of spring, wander or walk. And again, whether it's just in our yard or in our neighborhood, sometimes we'll go to a trail, but we try to notice those really early signs of spring, because honestly, it creates excitement. It creates hope, right, that it's coming. So as simple as, oh, you know what? Look at the deciduous trees and notice the buds on the trees. Early spring flowers that are coming up. In our area, we have a sagebrush buttercup. It's sort of the one wildflower that comes out really early. Even as the snow is melting, they'll start blooming. And then spring is a time of digging in the dirt, of, planting. I think that all children should have the opportunity to dig in the dirt. It's just so good for their bodies, their immune systems. And I go into the research in my book. So whether that's going to a park and just playing in the sand, or if you have a yard, setting up a bit of a mud kitchen. And often we think of mud kitchen and we see those Pinterest pictures and we think, I'm not handy, I can't do that. But honestly, go to a thrift store, grab some old pots and pans, some old muffin tins. Maybe you might even have some sort of rejects in your kitchen that need to be replaced. Bring them outside, get some dirt, get some water. I mean, that's a mud kitchen. You don't have to go fancy. And then also,
you mentioned one that I thought was so cool, dandelion Play-Doh. How do you do that?
Okay, it took me a while to perfect this recipe, and I was super proud that I did. So we get a lot of dandelions here. They are an invasive species, technically. And so we will collect the blooms and we I have a recipe in my book, but essentially pulverize them. And we have this secret ingredient, which I have in my recipe, that actually keeps that vibrant yellow color. And it's crazy. Like it ends up with this bright yellow Play-Doh that smells like honey, like dandelions.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a really
That's
fun
a fun
activity.
idea because then the kids can be very involved because they could go pick the dandelions first.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
exactly.
I guess we should be careful, like in case they've got pesticides on them or something, kind of wash them off before you do it.
Yeah, usually I'll give them a quick rinse if we're worried. But yes, give the petals and blend them up, and it makes a really neat dandelion.
Fun. So it's like a dye, but it's also kind of like a fragrance.
Exactly.
But that's fun. I'm going to try that one. That's really fun.
Yeah, it's a really fun one. And and some kids don't like playing in the dirt. So one thing I am seeing, and I have been reading, is that when kids have less opportunity to be outside, sometimes they can develop sensory issues and they can be a little uncomfortable. So dirt is a great gateway to kind of help with the sensory integration. And so sometimes as simple as finding a pile of dirt or a pile of sand and a shovel and a bucket. Like these are simple tools, but those can be really effective. Some kids really love like the dump trucks and doing like a dump truck area, playing with dirt that way, making things like mud pies. That's a lot of fun. I've had instances where my kids on their own created a mud swamp at the end of the slide in our yard and got very muddy. And then for kids who are a little bit more perhaps uncomfortable with just diving into that sort of mud play on their own, I really love introducing like planting and gardening to kids. And again, you don't need to have a yard or a big property to do this. You could do this if you are in an apartment, if you have a balcony or even a windowsill inside. So this can be a way to get kids more comfortable touching, handling dirt in a way that's a little bit more controlled if they're, a little squeamish about it, still exposing them to these really good microorganisms that are going to help, strengthen their immune system and benefit them.
Yeah. One thing I'd never heard of that I love is what is a seed bomb?
Yeah, I love seed bombs. So a seed bomb is essentially a combination of clay, dirt, and seeds that you mold together into small balls. And the idea of seed bombing comes from the idea of guerrilla gardening, where you would have these vacant plots of land and people would sort of seed bomb or throw seeds into these vacant lots to help rewild them. Now, I mentioned in my book, don't do that necessarily unless you have permission to do that. There's a few problems with just randomly seed bombing seeds. We don't want to be introducing invasive species in areas, obviously. But this is such a fun activity for kids and parents because you can, if you're able to source local, say, wildflower seeds from a nearby nursery, well, then, and have, get to know sort of your area, you might be able to help with actually rewilding in your area by dispersing these seed bombs, which we've done in our area. But you could also use just wildflower seeds and then plant them in your own garden. You can even give these as, gifts to teachers. This is a great Earth Day project. So my kids love making these. You can even roll them out into different shapes and make ornaments. Like it's
cute.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So, I mean, as long as you're using something that you know is native to your area, that's a lot better. But are you really literally just like throwing them and letting them kind of just sprinkle where they land? Or are you going to places and do you dig a little hole and throw them in there?
So it depends. There have been times that we have been working with organizations and we actually just throw them. So the clay will sort of protect the seed as it waters. The ball will start to disintegrate and the soil and the clay will give nutrients to the seeds to start growing. So, and then sometimes we'll actually plant them in the ground if we're making some for our own gardens. So either or works.
Very fun. Yeah, you've got a lot of fun ideas about dirt and mud. You could paint with mud. You can do sandbox. And not only is it great for the microbiome, but, physical therapists will tell you just the act of digging or the act of moving your fingers and hands to make a little something or make a ball with mud. I mean, that's like the precursor to getting them holding a pencil is just getting those little muscles ready in their hands that it's way better to have them do that through play and through doing their mud kitchen. And I was thinking too, like a lot of this is for little kids, But you mentioned in your book that there's kind of a problem, but that people notice teenagers sometimes just kind of go through this slump where they don't really want to be outside as much, or they don't really think that they care about nature as much. What are your thoughts on helping kind of nudge teenagers outside, or what we can do when they back away from wanting to be in nature?
We are seeing that, by the time kids are in sort of pre-adolescence, adolescence, there is less, of a encouragement for these kids to be getting outside. So I think the problem is twofold, like you mentioned. On one hand, as parents, as educators, we're thinking, maybe the outdoors is not that important anymore. I think it's time for them to be focusing on academics and extracurriculars. So we have that challenge happening. And then on the other side of things, we do see a shift in the pre-adolescent phase where there is what we call, or what's being called, the dip in nature connectedness, where there is less interest on their part. And I think the important thing as parents is not to kind of fall into that thinking that, oh, they're not interested or it's not important, but to realize that what we see in studies and the research is that while there might be less interest, teens that are getting the opportunity to go outdoors, to connect with nature, to play, because I still think that preteens and teens need to be playing, they are actually happier and healthier. So, which shouldn't surprise us. And so how do we support that? I have 3 teens right now, so I know that there's an added layer of challenge because unlike little children, we can sort of shuffle out the door, right?
Right.
It's
we're
hard to
going, whether you like it or not.
Exactly, right? I can't really do that with my, 200-pound teenage son, right? Who is towering over me. So I think one thing that's really important that I share in my book is for us to really model what that looks like as parents. We really need to make sure that we are showing that getting outside is important for our health and well-being, and talk about that. And I think that, that isn't the fact in so many, areas, even if we're looking at screens, right? We need to look at our own screen use, right? Before we start
Because teens especially can really pinpoint hypocrisy.
Oh,
and if
they
you're
can.
Just telling them to do this and then you don't do it, that is not going to work.
Exactly. So it's so important that you are modeling this, that it's important. And they'll see it, I will have my teenager look at me if I'm having a bad day and be like, Mom, I think you should go outside, right?
Yeah.
I think it would be good for you.
Great.
So, they know. And I think that's the first part of it is the modeling. Then I think as parents, we need to just invite, right? And I think it has to come from a place of connection and not a place of, oh, you need to go touch grass, right? Thing that we often hear, go touch grass. But, teens are often really seeking connection. And that might not always seem to be the case, right? But just inviting them to connect with you in connecting outside, is there something that you would like to do? So really tapping into their interests. I have a teenager that really loves to go searching for mushrooms, something that I talk about in my book. It's just like the weirdest thing, but he loves it. And so in the fall, I find I can usually use that as a leverage to get him outside. But then also the other thing that's important to realize is that, it's okay to also offer a bit of an incentive or a bribe in getting teens outside as well. I am not, I'm totally for doing that as necessary. So yeah, sometimes I'll tell my teen, hey, do you want to go grab a drink from a coffee shop and then let's go for a walk?
Okay.
And they're like, they want to do the coffee shop, but I'll be like, let's stroll a little bit.
We have to walk there. Yeah.
Exactly. We got to walk there. And you just kind of to continue to persist, continue to invite, and knowing, if they were children who were quite connected to nature in their younger days, that there's a very good chance that they will come back to it, even if they have this sort of dip.
And I like that you're saying not only modeling it, but explaining to them, because if you're going to be sending them off to college or a job in a couple of years, having them realize things like, oh, getting sunshine in the morning helps my mood, or getting sunshine helps me sleep better, or just pointing out these things that are actually going to be beneficial to their health as an adult, and just, yeah, maybe they'll do it. Maybe they won't right now, but hopefully they'll hear you. And maybe when they're feeling kind of crappy one day in the dorms, they'll just think, maybe I should take a quick walk. I remember Mom always saying that lifts your spirits.
Exactly. And I always find it so interesting that even if my teens might really be resisting something that we're doing, we do still try to do, activities with our whole family, the teens and the littles, and they might push back. But then afterwards, they say, "Oh, Mom, we really should do more of that." And I cannot tell you how many times they've done that. And so I try to hold on to that as a parent when I'm, trying to encourage them to get outside.
The last question I always like to ask everybody is, what is something you'd be willing to share of your childhood when you remember a time that you were allowed to just be completely on your own, either by yourself or with some friends, but there were no grown-ups telling you what to do or directing what you were supposed to do?
I mean, I would say that was a lot of my childhood.
Great.
So yeah,
that's lucky.
Yeah, I know. I feel like as I talk to people, I'm like, wow, I had a lot of independence. So I did grow up in a suburban neighborhood in the northern interior, and across the way there was this ravine. And I remember as a child, it just seemed so huge and so exciting. And you always revisit these places as an adult, and you're like, oh, this is like a lot smaller than I thought it would be. But essentially, I, remember I would come home from school. I would throw my pack sack through the front door. I wouldn't even walk in. I'd just kind of say, hey, I'm home. And then I would stay outside and play with the neighborhood kids until, I was called in for supper. And up in the north, the days are really long as we get towards...
Because you're in Canada, right?
I'm in Canada. That's right. And then as the day, as the summer would approach, the days get really long. And so sometimes I would even, be naughty, not listen to my parents come in for dinner, be staying out until, really late. The street lights are coming on. We're playing whatever, capture the flag through the neighborhood. And yeah, that was just a really normal part of sort of my childhood, was doing that, climbing trees, playing in the ravine, building forts. And I remember too, we would just bike to the corner store, which I think was almost 10 kilometers away. So like 5 miles, I think, is kind of the equivalent. Wow. We would just bike there. We would tell our parents, oh, we're going to the corner store. And yeah, and we would just go. And
how old do you think you were?
I would say like 9 or 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very fun.
At least. Yeah.
It's funny because when I ask this of people, they all have pretty much the same answer. It's like, I just got to play outside a lot with my friends on our own. Yeah. And so I think it's just nice for us to remember that a lot of us did that. And the more we can let our kids do that, the better, because a lot of people have shied away from that. And so if we can kind of make an effort to give them the same leeway that we had, that'd be
exactly.
nice.
Yeah. And I do think effort is the key, because it's definitely becoming almost countercultural, which is... It just is quite weird. But I know even for myself, I'll just, my son's friends will come over. He's 13. And I'll just say, hey, why don't you go walk to the corner store or go to the park? Like I have to kind of like push them out sometimes. But they love it. Like they love having, that independence. It gives them so much self-confidence. And I think that's so important, right? As we are raising our kids into adolescence and then beyond, because without that, we're going to start to see essentially failure to launch, right? Because of the significant lack of independence and the overprotectiveness.
How can people find out more about you and your book and your blog?
So I have a website called backwoodsmama.com, and on there I have a blog as part of that. I have lots of free downloads if people are looking for some just really easy prompts like a nature scavenger hunt, those kinds of things. I have lots of sort of resources for parents and educators. If you want to learn more about my book, I do have a book page on there, but my book is available pretty much anywhere books are sold. You can ask your local bookshop to order it in if they don't have it in stock. And if you don't want to necessarily buy it right away, then ask your local library to bring it in, because that's just such a great way for other families to find it, right? And you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at the Backwoods Mama, and on Facebook, I think it's Backwoods Mama page.
Okay. And the book is called Beyond the Front Door. And like I said, it's got so many fun ideas of things to do outside, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for coming on to talk with me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cynthia. It was such a great opportunity to chat.
I will have more of my interview with Josée next week. She will talk about some things that were in her book that I had never heard of before, like spot sitting and how to interview a tree. Some really fun ideas to do with your kids. So tune in next week. And in the meantime, you can check out screenlessplaymore.com. Thank you for listening.